Hello and welcome to this workshop on going from being self-conscious to self-aware. In case we don't know each other, my name is Katrine Hall, and if you're watching here on Zoom, feel free to participate via the chat, and over on LinkedIn, if you're watching over on LinkedIn, I'd be thrilled to have your comments too. So I'll be navigating through screens here, so please bear with me if I don't always react very quickly. Also, I want to focus on the content today, so I don't want to be too distracted, but you're welcome to ask any kind of question or comment, and you are welcome to disagree with me. We don't always have to agree on everything, do we? And what's so interesting about participating in a workshop is that you get to see things from a different perspective. And I think we could all benefit from that from time to time. I certainly enjoy that. So let's dive in. I titled this From Self-Consciousness to Self-Awareness. And what does that even mean? What is being self-conscious? And why is it that we want to move into self-awareness? So just to outline for you, I could have called it from self-monitoring and self-editing to self-belief and trust. That would be the same sort of journey that we'll be going on. So being self-conscious is when you are allowing the world, the outside, to inform you of who you are. And self-awareness is when it comes from the inside. So I hope that this difference will be made completely clear for you. And I hope that you can identify the areas in which you are being self-conscious and where you would want to move into more self-awareness, and where you already are marvelously self-aware. So I have a little bit of an extreme story about this, but before I go into that, let me just be really super clear on this self-consciousness piece. You are self-conscious when you are asking, how am I coming across? Or what are they thinking? Or did I handle that okay? Or did I say the right thing? So I think most of us have had those kinds of thoughts before. And I think that's normal, especially when we are like growing up, we're teenagers, we're sort of experimenting with who we are in the world. And we are very prone to take our cues from the outside world. However, we don't want to be dependent on the outside world to tell us who we are. And we don't want to be attempting to control the outside world, which of course we can't. So when we ask ourselves, well, what are they thinking of me? Or did I say the right thing? Or did I do the right thing? Or all of that. We are really asking, how can I manipulate other people or circumstances? How can I get in there and control them? How can I behave in a way where I can be certain that they will like me? Or how can I do the right thing, the thing that they are expecting me to do and that they will approve of? So all of this, of course, is enormously tiring. And really, it is not something that has us feel good. So I said I had a bit of an extreme story around this. And if you don't know me at all, even if I'm in personal development now, I wasn't always, because when I started out in my career, I don't think it even existed. So I started out as a classical musician. And of course, that was my dream. I had a crazy dream. It somehow came to pass. I won't go into the somehow here, because what I really want to stress is that I thought I had to perform. And in a way I did, because as a musician, you do perform on stage. But then I thought that there was a right way. There was the way to perform. There was the way to interpret music, or later on, when I got into theatre, to interpret a role. There was something that was expected of me, and I had to live up to that. And I'm sure many of you can recognize it, perhaps not in such an extreme case, But that feeling of not being able to be just ourselves, because that won't do, that's not good enough. So I'm putting it very bluntly, but let's just sort of feel into, actually, am I modifying my behavior to please? And as we do this introspection, I'm sure you're aware that it's not to criticize, and it's not to shame, or it's not to judge. It's simply to create awareness, because once we are aware, then we can take it up and question it. So I spent a lot of my younger years being extremely self-conscious, to the point where I felt like my whole identity was about being accepted and even liked. And I had the idea that if my audience liked me, if they approved of me, if they came up and told me after a piece or after a concert, "Oh, you did so well. You are so fantastic, Katrina. We enjoyed it so much. You're the best thing since sliced bread," all that. I thought, oh, maybe then I would believe that it was true. And so if you can see, I was all the time asking my outside world to validate me. And as I had very little self-worth, I needed a lot of validation, right? I needed people to love me outrageously. I needed really for them to tell me all the time that I was doing well. And the problem here is that we can't actually, we can't actually perform in a way where we are certain that people will like it, can we? We can't actually modify who we are to fit into something that we are guaranteed people will like. So what's the point of even trying? I don't believe that there is a point of trying. And really where I want us to move to is to where we inform ourselves of who we are through who we want to be, who we know ourselves to be, and who we decide to be. And when we do that, we really don't need that validation piece from the outside. We are happy to be self-identified. And then, of course, we want to create a lot of trust and belief around that, so that even though other people sometimes disapprove of us, we don't take it to mean anything about our worthiness or our kindness, our whatever, our deservedness, our place in the world. We don't take it to mean anything about ourselves that is not conducive to our well-being. So I've got an example of this from just yesterday. I was at a networking meeting, and there was this person who kept talking. So we were put into groups, and we're supposed to talk about a certain subject. And this person kept talking and talking. So at one point, I sort of gently stopped her and said, maybe we could ask this other person what she thinks. And this came from the intention to hear from the other people present there, so there wouldn't be one person monopolizing the whole conversation, if you see what I mean. And so I felt perfectly justified in doing it. And so that's the sort of thing I just do these days. But this person took it upon herself to be extremely offended. And she really got really miffed. And she even complained about me, I think, to the organizers. And maybe she felt that I was being really disrespectful. That's certainly the feedback she gave me. But then did I need that to inform me of my degree of respect for other people or my degree of kindness to other people? No, really, I didn't. Because I know that I'm, profoundly speaking, a kind person. Now, for me, kind doesn't mean putting up with any kind of thing. So I felt that it was okay to interrupt this person, but obviously she didn't. Now, before in my life, when I was a lot younger, I really took that upon myself. I really took that very, very seriously. And I would have taken that person's opinion about me to be true. I would really have thought, oh goodness, does this mean that I'm rude? Or I would have said, she shouldn't have said that. she shouldn't have meant that. She shouldn't have thought that. And I would have been extremely upset. So can you see where I'm going with this? It's like if I try to fit in or modify any kind of behavior of mine so that other people will find me, I don't know, fascinating, interesting, or simply acceptable, well, then I will never really discover who I am, and I will never actually be able to contribute at my best. So when I say to be at my best, I don't mean what I used to make it mean, and that was being perfect. I thought that my best was to live up to perfection, and when I didn't, well, that meant I wasn't at my best. So I had this impossible high standard to live up to. And I talked about being on stage, and again, coming back to that experience, playing a concert and making mistakes. I would make that mean something shameful. I would even question my ability, and I would question my right to be on stage. And I would think, wow, these people, if they like me, if they enjoyed the concert, it must be that they're completely, what can I say, mistaken. Because I made these mistakes, so it can't have been good. So if they come up and tell me that it was good, well, then I really can't trust them. I really can't, because it can't have been good. You see all the sort of knots I would get my mind into, and all of that time and energy would be spent on something completely unproductive and really detrimental to my mental health and my well-being. So that is why we don't want to be always looking on the outside for confirmation of what we want to believe about ourselves. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat, and I'll go over on LinkedIn to check if you are following along over there. Fabulous. So it is making sense. So that is really what we're talking about. So 3 things why we don't want to be self-conscious. They are: 1, it has us behave in a way that is not congruent, which is not in alignment with who we really are. 2, it doesn't feel good. And 3, it takes up a lot of energy. And all of that comes from that sort of basic underlying belief that we are not good enough as we are, that we have to add something extra. So, of course, this kind of behavior, or this kind of notion, this kind of experience of not being good enough is something that has been modeled to us. And that's how we picked it up, because when we were babies, when we were toddlers, when we were little children, we were just very happy with who we are, weren't we? We were just expecting, when we smiled at people, that they would smile back. We were very happy to be with other people, to hug them, to be around them, to play around them without being self-conscious at all. We were just like completely open books, weren't we? We were just experiencing life firsthand. And that's how we learn, isn't it? But then somewhere along the line, as we became perhaps adolescents, or perhaps a bit before, we really started observing ourselves from the outside. And we learned that probably from our friends, from society, our teachers, at school, at home, our parents, our family, our siblings. Probably we were made very aware of how the world saw us, because we would get feedback in the shape of, oh, don't do that, or you look so and so. And we would be told off for being something or behaving in a kind of way that wasn't how we were supposed to, obviously in inverted commas. So well-meaning parents could have been eager, the way my parents were, to help me be in a way, in society where they could feel good about me, where they could feel that I was safe, where I wouldn't get hurt. And so that meant just conforming to a lot of social, what can I call them, social rules, really. So, of course, we were taught not to be rude, but really, if we teach children not to be rude, it's because we believe that they might be rude. But I don't think that we are as children. We are not rude to be rude, are we? We might sometimes say something that can trigger people because children will say the truth, won't they? So I think the well-meaning idea from parents, the well-meaning idea was that let me tell my child how to behave in society so that they won't be outcast, or so that they won't be criticized, so that they will be accepted, and blah, 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 because that was exactly what was modeled to them. So my idea is that, well, actually, if we are ourselves, and if we allow ourselves to be fully expressed, if we don't limit ourselves or start hiding or hiding our light, we say, well, then actually we are at our best, and there's no reason to be rude. There is no reason to be aggressive. There is only kindness and generosity. That's how I believe we really came out here into the world. So feel free to disagree with me. Feel free to comment. If you don't agree, I think it's always interesting to have a discussion around this. So just notice for yourself, how am I? How am I reproducing this? How am I reproducing what I picked up on when I was little? And again, without any judgment, don't judge your parents, don't judge your teachers, don't judge your friends. Like, that's not what we're here for, because they were just playing out their own patterning and programming that they had been learning and studying. So as a society, we've just accepted a lot of things that we can now, as adults, question without being upset about it. We can simply start noticing. So I said that there were 3 things about being self-conscious that are not conducive to our well-being, and that is, they have us behave in a way that is not natural, that is not who we are. It doesn't feel good, and it takes up a lot of energy. So why am I saying it's not who we are? It is exactly because of what I've just been talking about. It is not who we are because when we are being self-conscious, we are repeating the patterns and programming from society and our upbringing. And that is learnt behavior. It's not who we are. It's simply what we have been practicing, maybe for a number of years. Certainly if you're as old as I am, a number of years. It's a behavior that has become so ingrained that we sometimes believe, oh, this is who I am. We start believing I'm somebody who doesn't speak up in public. I'm somebody who can't wear what she wants to at a party or at work because that might not be received well. I was talking about how we have come into believing that our learnt patterning and programming is just who we are. And what I'm asking you to do now is to bring all that out and question it. Actually question it. So I've been taught to watch what I say. Now, what if that is simply a filter that I've put on myself, and that is actually no longer serving me, because I can trust myself just to be naturally and normally very nice to talk to. So I don't actually have to monitor myself. I don't have to edit what I want to say. I can just be spontaneous and say whatever comes to mind, because I know that I'm somebody who's kind. So I'm not going to say something that will upset people. I'm not going to hurt anybody on purpose. So that's really the first thing that self-consciousness have us do. It's have us behave in a way that has come perhaps now to feel natural, but really isn't. It simply feels natural because we've been practicing it. So let's take all of that up and question it. So when we start asking ourselves, how am I coming across? Did I say the right thing? Did I handle that well? Or what are they thinking of me? Let's just really notice, first of all, and then say, well, what if I could change that whole patterning, like, for good? What if I could just take this up and really question it? And we're coming to that point. But before we go there, let's look at how it doesn't feel good. Why is that a problem? It doesn't feel good, does it? Because we feel insecure, we feel afraid or fearful, we feel uncertain. These feelings of insecurity, of not being safe, of not being able to just relax and be yourself, it doesn't feel good. So we don't want to be doing that. It prevents us from being at our best. Think about me, the story I talked about being on stage. So being on stage, how could I be at my best? How could I play, like, interpret the pieces how I wanted them if I was all the time fearful? If I was coming from fear, thinking, oh, I might get this wrong, or what are they thinking, or how is this sounding, or is this going well? If I'm monitoring myself like that all the time, well, I'm sure you can tell that I'm not performing at my best. If instead I was thinking, I am enjoying myself so much, I'm focused on the music, I am playing from my heart, I'm sure you can see that this would be a completely totally different experience for me, and I think the audience would feel it too. So without making it as extreme as being on stage, I'm sure you can see how that really influences us in many examples. Like in your professional life, if you are coming from the idea that you have to conform, or that there's a wrong thing to say, or that you can't say what you think, can you feel how putting that pressure on yourself diminishes your performance? Can you see that? So again, imagine me on stage, playing for people, trying to do my best, trying to transmit a lot of emotion, trying to transmit something I've prepared for a long time, trying to really move my audience, but having my mind occupied by all these monitoring thoughts, all these thoughts about how am I coming across? Is this going well? Did I do that well? Could I have done it better? All of that. It takes away from whom I would really be if I was not doing that, if I was in the moment. And it takes up so much energy that often we don't have the energy for all the rest. And I find that with my clients, sometimes they tell me I need a lot of alone time. And I think we all need time to be alone. But can you see how when you are performing all of the time, how you need even more time to recover? Because you have not been natural, you have not been spontaneous, you've been putting a filter, like a pressure on yourself, which has been very, very exerting to keep up. It has taken away from your energy. So if you're somebody who needs a lot of alone time, of course, you can call yourself an introvert and all of that. And of course, we do need some, but I would really question where that is coming from. Ask yourself, well, why is it? Why is it that I need so much time to recover? What's behind all of that? So I was talking about the strain of having to perform or having to live up to. That is really, really a strain and a drain. So if we need a lot of time to recover, having been with people, I would question that. And for me, if you can imagine, after a concert, I would find it very, very draining if afterwards there would be a reception. So, you know, people like to come and talk to artists and tell them about their experiences and all of that. And I would find that to be a drain. Why was that? Because I wouldn't be able to be myself. I thought that if I was just being my normal, relaxed, ordinary Katrina, that would not be good enough. So even after the concert, it was still even more draining and more draining and more draining because I was playing a role all the time. I was monitoring myself. I was editing. And can you see how draining that is and how it doesn't make us want to go towards people? That is really, really also a reason why we would question, is it serving me? Is it serving me having to edit myself? Is it serving me to be so aware of my surroundings that they dictate how I feel and they dictate how I behave? So I would say that no, it is absolutely not worth it. But what is standing in our way? It's again what I talked about at the beginning. It's this idea that, oh, I can't just be myself because who would that be? And could I really trust that version of me to be good enough, right? To be acceptable. So of course we can trust ourselves. Of course we really can. But before we do that, let's just get really clear on who it is that we really are. Because I think once we get to know ourselves, once we become really familiar with who we are, and once we learn how to trust that that is really who we are, it means that nobody else can dissuade us otherwise. So I'm going to talk about a few steps you can take towards this, both like in your introspection, but also in real life. But what I always recommend is to go inside first. So we don't want to be taking needless action out in the real world. We don't want to be practicing out in the real world where there are consequences before we have sort of got on board with it. So we want to have persuaded our, not just our intellectual mind, but also our subconscious mind that we are safe, that this is what we want, and that we are okay. And then we want to go and practice. So we need to establish that psychological safety first, if that makes sense. When we get to be really certain of who we are, it's by introspection, isn't it? It's by not taking our information, our cues from the outside world. It's through going inside and then, I believe, deciding on who we want to be. So we came into this world being, as I said, completely open. We took on beliefs without questioning them. So that is what I would call our learnt behavior, our learnt beliefs. So now we actually get to decide, because personality isn't permanent. We don't have to identify, say, like shy. We can take that up for revision. And so what I like to do with my clients is to let's decide to be, well, what we want to be, and let's believe that we are this thing or this character trait or this ability or this capacity or this quality. Let's believe it before we've got any evidence of it. So if people come and tell me, Katrina, you are so talented, well, it makes it a lot easier for me to believe. However, the strongest form of self-belief is if I can believe it myself, despite what other people tell me. So I've got so much self-belief that people can come and say something to me that is not, that I don't believe, I don't want to believe, so I'm not going to believe it. I've got enough belief already generated for myself on the inside. And even if I haven't got proof of it yet, I can still believe it. So I can start believing, actually, I'm not so much shy as I'm reserved. Now, what's the difference? What does that feel like? If I'm reserved, what does that mean? It means that I have to feel comfortable with people before I give my opinion. It means that I have to feel safe before I can express myself. Oh, that's okay, isn't it? So it's okay to be reserved. Actually, it means that I can sometimes give my opinion. I can sometimes speak up. I don't have to, but I can choose to. And actually, how can I feel safe? And so can you see how you can introspectively take everything up for revision and then change your beliefs around things that you want to change? So I don't see why anybody would want to keep the identity of being shy. So that's why I picked shy. I can't see why anybody wants to do that. So I would encourage you to start modifying it. And it's very difficult to go from believing, oh, I'm shy, I'm awkward. I've even got clients who started off by thinking they were socially awkward. What an idea. But it's very difficult to go from I'm shy to I'm the life of the party. It's much, much easier to go in little steps. But however we want to attack the thing, we have to be willing to believe. We have to be willing to believe something that we haven't yet experienced out in the real world. Do you see what I mean? I've just completely lost the chat now.
That must be my fault. I'm so sorry.
No. I've found it again. Okay, but feel free to
Okay.
comment if you don't agree or if you've got questions. Thank you for all the hearts. Yes, thank you, Anna. So good. So if we go with this idea that we can actually believe in something before we have got real life proof. It's like I can believe that I'm a courageous woman. If I believe I'm a courageous woman, it's much easier for me to take courageous action. Can you see that? So when I grew up, I think, well, no, I've got a more recent example, actually. I've always identified as courageous. So I got the idea that I wanted to put on a one-woman show in Avignon, which is a famous theatre festival here in France where I live. And that was so scary. It was the most scary thing I've done in my life. But I just kept telling myself, yeah, you can do it. You're courageous and blah, blah, blah. So I talked myself into it. Now, did I have to wait for me to be in Avignon to see that I was courageous? Well, that would have made it a lot harder to do it, wouldn't it? It's much easier to do if I can persuade myself to believe that I am courageous ahead of time. So that is how I would like for you to work the introspection. It is really thinking about, okay, this is how I identify now. What of all these identifiers are actually serving me? What do I want to keep? And what do I want to modify? And please think about going in little stages. The example I gave from going from shy to being perhaps reserved, seeing the positive in being reserved, opening the door to being able to speak up when you feel relaxed, when you feel confident, when you feel safe. And then perhaps when you are already there, or when you're there, when you are feeling, okay, I can speak up, then you can start working on, well, how do I get to feel safe? So it's all in little stages like that. You can work with it. That all happens in the mind, doesn't it? And really, that is where we will have to make the changes to start off with. Because when we are being self-conscious, we are being self-conscious because we are only acting from information in the brain. And what would be much more useful for us, really, I think what would help us trust ourselves much more is if we went into our bodies via our feelings. So when we are in those situations where we would normally be self-conscious, asking, how am I coming across? What do they think? How am I handling this? We could ask, what am I experiencing right now? How am I feeling? And that would bring us into our bodies. And even more than bringing us into our bodies, which is where our subconscious lives, well, we would actually get in touch with our emotions. And the good thing about emotions is that they get a much fuller picture of a situation. So I think it's the Chinese who say that a picture speaks more than 1,000 words, or says more than 1,000 words. And what if emotions spoke louder than 1,000 words? What if there's actually a lot of information in how we're feeling? What if we started taking on board all of that info? What if we were not so busy in our minds monitoring and editing, and we went into our bodies and took on that sort of instinctive information? The reason there is more information in the feelings is that it's not in words. It's sort of like a download. We can come into a room and we can decipher the room through a feeling, can't we? We can meet a person and have a feeling, which tells us much more than if we start analyzing in our minds. And there's nothing wrong with analyzing, but if we are always analyzing, it means that we are not taking in the input that is available to us. And I think when we get used to coming into a situation, being self-aware, asking ourselves, what am I experiencing right now? How am I feeling? Am I enjoying this conversation, this situation? What would I love right now? When we are focused on all of that, well, we are taking in much more information. What do you think? Would you agree with that? Let me just look over on LinkedIn. Yeah, so the idea is that we take in a lot of information, not just through our intellectual mind, but actually through our impressions via the body. Yes, thank you, Adi. So we were made like as feeling beings, weren't we? We were made with an intellectual mind and then with all the rest of our sensing capacities. And they can be downloaded, all of these impressions, via an emotion. So when we get aware of what emotion we're feeling, we are actually tapping into deciphering a situation or a room or a person in a much more global way. And if we can get to trust that feeling, then we don't have to be doing the analyzing. And when we can let go of analyzing everything to death, when we can feel safe without the analysis, if we can stop second guessing and actually trust that what we are feeling is part of the information, I think that is a huge step in self-trust. So instead of coming into a situation, a conversation or whatever, being self-conscious, thinking, how am I coming across? You can go into the same situation, learn how to trust yourself, and then feel your feels, be conscious of them, and then, if need be, question them, if need be. And what would have you need to question your feelings? Well, if they weren't serving you. Oh, good, Adi. Yes. So good. I analyze everything, and this is music to my ears. Yes, because we spend a lot of time in our brains, and there's nothing wrong with our intellect. We want to use it, but we don't want to be only experiencing life through our intellect. That's not how it was meant to be. We want to use all of the information. However, when we are self-conscious, we are more in our brains, and we are so much in our brains that we try to push down or ignore any other information. So we sort of bottle up our feelings and we disregard them. And that can never be right, can it? Because we were made with feelings. So why not use them? I particularly like, I like the idea of asking myself, what would I love right now? Or am I enjoying this conversation? Am I enjoying this situation? Because it really pulls me out of this idea that I have to get through something. So the example I gave of yesterday in the networking meeting, when I interrupted the woman who was speaking, I was asking myself, am I enjoying this? And the answer is no, I'm not. I'm not, because she is simply not, she's not even self-conscious. She's not even self-aware. She's not even aware of other people in the room, because she is simply completely self-focused. And I think that's another thing that holds us back from being just who we are. It's because we don't want to be sort of, how can I say that? Selfish? It's not the right word, but we don't want to take up all of the space, do we? And we think if we start taking up a little bit of the space, it means we take up all of the space or too much of the space or something like that. We're not quite clear on that. But this woman was a perfect example of being completely oblivious to what other people were feeling in the room, completely self-centered. Maybe that's the word I was looking for. Being completely self-centered, and so not allowing other people to express themselves. So I was coming from the idea, when I interrupted her, that I don't have to experience this situation in this way. Actually, I'm not enjoying it. Let me interrupt it, and let me just see if something else is available. And as soon as I interrupted her and made other people come into the conversation, well, the conversation flowed spontaneously. And so I thought, okay, this is perfect. I'm enjoying it now, and this is good. So I think it's actually doing a service to everybody when you do feel that you can take this spontaneous action where you're not analyzing it, but you're just simply aware of how you're feeling. So I wasn't feeling good about listening to this woman going on and on, occupying like all the space. So I felt that I could take action just very naturally, non-aggressively, I thought. And so that this woman chose to take that for me that I was disrespectful or that anything in that vein. Well, that was really her choice, wasn't it? I mean, she could have taken it as a moment to say, oh, this Katrina person, she seems to be all right, but she just attacked me. She was just disrespectful to me. What am I not understanding here? That was an opportunity for her. And at the moment, she didn't take that opportunity. Maybe later she will, I don't know, but I really can't control that, so I'm not trying to. And she's really free to think of me what she wants. So maybe she went away from that whole event thinking, I never want to see that Katrina person again. She's so disrespectful. She's so rude. And I'm okay with that. I really am, because I don't think I'm rude and I don't think I'm disrespectful. So it's like, yeah, I'm not triggered. I'm so certain of myself. I'm so certain of coming from good intentions that her misinterpretation of that really can't touch me. But that is sort of analyzing it after the effect or after the event. Only you know yourself, doesn't matter what she says. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I often give another example of that because I used to be overweight when I was young, very young. And so I thought I was overweight. And if people called me fat, I would be mortified. I would be so hurt. Because when they reflected back to me that I was fat, it really hit a chord. It met my belief that I was fat, and that didn't feel good. Whereas now, if you call me fat now, I just say, really? Not bothered, not even triggered, because there's no belief in myself of me as a fat person. I don't identify with that. So again, just to illustrate that the more self-aware you become, and the more you direct that self-awareness into something that serves you, the more confident you can not only appear, but you can actually be. And that feels good. That feels really good. So you can sort of operate in the world without any apprehension, without any editing, without any self-censorship, is what I like to call it. Other people call it self-monitoring. And it feels so good just to be able to be spontaneous. And of course, some people will be offended, but really, my life experience is so much more joyful when I can just say, well, if they choose to be offended, well, let them be offended. So let me just look at my notes. Yes. So what I'm saying here is we can use suggestion. We are very prone to have heterosuggestion influence us, which means we are very prone to being influenced by what other people say, what other people do, what we hear on the news, what we see on social media. All of that can influence us. But the power of autosuggestion or self-suggestion is really just as powerful, only we don't practice it a lot. So we auto-suggest when we tell ourselves things like, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I've got this. I can speak up because I'm safe. I'm safe to speak up because my opinion is important. So we can auto-suggest things to ourselves. And another shocking example of how heterosuggestion doesn't really do much for us is that when somebody compliments you, when somebody says, "Oh, Katrina, you're looking so gorgeous today," I can say thank you, but really that compliment doesn't influence me in any old way because I've already decided how I feel about how I look. So of course it's nice if somebody tells me you look wonderful, but if I want to take that on, then I also have to be willing to take on when somebody tells me, "Oh, you look like an old slob." So I really want to be careful with what I take on board, with what I'm willing to believe. That is really my only point of control. I can control what goes into my mind, and I'm the person responsible for it. So I don't have to take on what anybody suggests to me. I don't have to take on if, let's say, I'm fumbling with my credit card when I pay in a foreign country where things don't happen the way they do where I live, and I can look really silly or something like that. I really don't have to take that on because I know I'm not silly. So I can go through the world feeling really, really good. And from that good feeling space where I'm not saying I'm better than other people, right? Very important. I'm just saying that I'm a good person. I like myself. I would even go as far as to say I love myself. When I go through the world like that, I'm at my best. I'm not being filtered. I'm not being monitored. I'm not being edited. I am whom I am at my best. And I think that's really our biggest gift to the world. Don't know if anybody wants to argue with me on that. This idea that we are at our best when we are being our natural selves. So I think our natural selves are unguarded, spontaneous, open, kind, and loving. I think that's most of humanity. So if we can trust ourselves to always be that, why wouldn't we be? And the reason we are sometimes guarded, sometimes defensive, sometimes putting up an arm around us so that we won't get hurt, is simply because we have been taught that this was how we create safety. So we were taught and we started to believe that the way to be safe is to protect myself from the outside world. I protect myself from the outside world by putting up a barrier between me and the outside world. The problem is that I want the outside world to inform me of whom I am, but I can't really have the world reflect to me whom I am if I'm not showing myself, if I'm protecting myself behind this armor. So really, when you break it down like that, it doesn't even make sense. So what if what we've been told about conforming and performing and protecting and living up to, what if that was actually bad advice? What if that was just reliving what former generations have been putting in place because that's all they could think of? What if we are actually allowed now to think, oh, I can build myself up. I can have so much self-belief. And self-belief does not mean that I'm selfish. It doesn't mean that I'm self-centered. It simply means I believe in myself, not to be better than, not to be worse than either, but just to be. And then other people can be, and we can all be different, and that can be so good. So Michelle says, but constructive criticism is good, right? For example, if one is doing something wrong, but they feel it's right, but you know it's wrong, is it good to give them the hard truth, or is it better to not engage at all? I believe that you can say anything if it's coming from love. That is really my honest opinion. I can say anything on my mind if my intention is not negative. Like if I'm coming from love, I think, oh, I could really help this person. I could really help this person by saying this. I'm being helpful. I think you can say anything you want. Now, again, it's a question of dosage, right? Because if somebody is displaying behavior in front of you and you say, criticize, I think it's always easier for the person to take on if we come from curiosity. So I like to say, instead of attacking people, like saying, why are you doing that like that? Saying, oh, I'm curious. You just did this. Why? Or when you say that, why is that? What makes you say this? Or something like that, just from a reflective standpoint. So I'm not telling them that they're doing something wrong. So I don't feel that I'm criticizing, I'm commenting. And if I can honestly come just from curiosity without any kind of negativity behind it, not any kind of wanting to put things right, because I really don't know, do I? I really don't know. Also, I like to think about the impression it makes on me. So I like to say to people when they say something that doesn't feel good to me, I can say, when you say this, I feel this. Was that your intention? So we're just opening up for a conversation. And sometimes the people say, oh, no, I didn't want to, blah, blah, blah. I say, oh, okay, we're good then. Okay. And sometimes people just think I'm weird, and that's okay, right? They don't all have to love me. But really, when we come from that questioning, curiosity angle or perspective or energy, I think it's so much easier to have a constructive conversation. Okay, brilliant. Brilliant. Such a good question. So I think we can all benefit from becoming more self-aware. So we don't want to be self-conscious because self-consciousness is in the brain. Self-awareness includes all the available information, the information we have decided on who we are. It includes the impressions we get through our feelings, our senses, and it includes the thoughts we have. And when we've got all of those together, well, then we're really in a position to take appropriate action or behave appropriately, don't you think? We've got all the information. Now we can trust ourselves to be perfectly able to handle all of that. So when we've got the belief, I'm so self-aware, I can really trust my thoughts and feelings and trust myself to take appropriate action or have an appropriate response to any situation, then I'm good. I can go out into the world confident. I can go to meetings. I know I don't have to prove that I can speak up. I can wait for the prompt to speak up. I can wait for the conditions to be united in which I feel safe to speak up. I can cultivate those conditions. So what I'm saying by that is, please don't go out now and practice being against people. It's not, you don't have to go out and prove, oh, now I'm confident. Oh, now I can speak up. Now I can say anything. Katrina told me I can say anything. Oh, I'm saying this with love and being aggressive about it, right? That's not what I'm saying. It's coming from an inner desire to express who you really are. I think that's the magic mix here. It's not forcing yourself to do or behave in a way that doesn't feel comfortable. It's prepping yourself to be that person, who just naturally moves through anything with confidence, feeling assured. Like if I'm confident, it doesn't take any confidence away from you, does it? If I love myself, it doesn't take any love away from you. If I'm feeling competent, it doesn't take any competence away from you. So I'm really free to just go ahead and think about myself and believe about myself what I want. And then I can nurture those beliefs. And that is something you can practice. Nurture those beliefs till they feel so much part of whom I am that I will naturally take action from that identity. So this is a bit of a profound discussion to have, but I really think that this is such an important piece. I talk a lot about identity and personality and the patterns and programs that we take on, having been such a victim to it. And what I can honestly say is, if you are brave enough to go deep inside, trust me, you won't ever discover anything despicable. You won't ever discover anything shameful. You will only discover so much more of who you are. And can I just encourage you to do that? So you do that through, for instance, journaling. Journaling about how you're feeling, what your thoughts are, and looking at, well, do I want to change them? You can also auto-suggest. You can have I am statements. So I don't like the idea of mantras. I don't like saying, I'm the most gorgeous woman in the world, because first of all, I don't believe that at all. And I know I'm not, because it's not an absolute truth, is it? It's a relative truth. So I like those I am statements to ring of truth, something that you're very willing to believe. So I'm, instead of trying to convince myself that I'm the most gorgeous person in the world, I can tell myself, Katrina, you are, or I am, looking so good for my age. Thank you for taking so good care of yourself. So you can practice that. The idea is that you want to not just make a shift in your intellectual mind the way we have done it right now with this workshop. The idea is to take it further and bring it down into your emotional body, into your subconscious, so that the two agree. And when the two agree, you become very powerful, trust me. Let me just check over on LinkedIn. Right. And, well, are there any questions on any of that? I find that those are the two most useful things. I like mirror work. We do a lot of that with my clients, standing in front of the mirror and telling yourself who you are. Loving things, right? So we always want to come to our own awareness with love. When we find something that we want to change, we don't want to condemn it. We don't want to deny it. We don't want to suppress it. We want to bring it up into the light. And then we want to get curious about it. And if that is something that speaks to you, I would love to do that with you. I would really love to dive deep and help you see everything you could bring up to the surface of who you are. And the idea of doing that is that life gets to be a lot more joyful when you get to really explore all of who you are, and when you get to live that out, and when you let other people see that. I think that's really the most valuable contribution we can have in this world. So if that is something that speaks to you, if you want to spend an hour with me going deep into this work we've been talking about, I'm putting a link into the chat and you're free to book a session. I've got time next week and then I've got no more time. So hopefully you're free next week to come and talk to me. If you can't find an appropriate time, feel free to reach out to me somewhere on the internet, on LinkedIn, if you're over on LinkedIn, via email, if you found this on Facebook or somewhere else, just reach out. But really what we're going to do is to see how you can bring out more of who you are by creating what I call the psychological safety. So that is all the inner work. Once we do all the inner work and you feel really good about your new identity, then you can go ahead. Then you can be more of her. And then it will spill out into real life. So no, it doesn't cost money. It is free, Michelle. An initial conversation is free. So you just come along. You have to have a whole hour ahead of you. You have to be in a space where you can't be overheard, so we can have an intimate conversation. The more honest you can be in this conversation, the more I can be helpful. So my intention is to be helpful. If you want to take this further and start working with me, meaning start really doing all of this work with my guidance, then I can let you know what that would look like, and that would be a paid offer. But the initial conversation is free. I call them life audit sessions because we really go through life, not from the perspective of this is wrong, I must change it, but from the perspective of what would I love. So I would invite anybody who feels like this could be their next step to really, I mean, it sounds like try to say more of who, bring out more of who you are, but really the consequences or the benefits of that is that your relationships become so much easier. The benefit of it is that people can relate to you, not to your role, not to your performance, but to who you really are. And the biggest benefit for me was that I was able then to be self-confident, something I never was before, because I was relying on other people to let me know what to think about myself. And that didn't feel good. So have you got any questions before we sign off? And thank you for staying a bit longer. And before you leave, can I just apologize for the attack we had on this meeting? I shall certainly look into how I can prevent that in the future. I'm ever so sorry about that. So I hope you have recovered your equanimity and that you are not leaving here feeling hurt or attacked or anything like that, right? So good. So if you've got any questions, I can see there are questions, but I can't see. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Brilliant. You are welcome, Adi. So go ahead if it speaks to you, if you want to explore what doing this work, what the benefits would be for you, I would go ahead and book one of those sessions. So next week, I've made plenty of availability. After next week, it gets to be a lot harder. So please jump on anything that could be relevant to you. If we're in different time zones, just reach out. Let me know what would suit you. Let's start the conversation.